Okay, everyone, welcome to the conversation. Outspoken Opinionated. Of course, I am your host, Edwin Mayah. I want to say welcome again to a beautiful Thursday here. I ask you again to please go to YouTube, The Conversation Outspoken Opinionated. Go to Facebook, The Conversation Outspoken Opinionated, as well as you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all those great places. But we're asking you really to follow us on a live podcast network. That is where the Conversation Outspoken Opinionated is housed. And so you can get our audio version of the podcast. But of course, if you want to get the video version, it's on Facebook, it's on YouTube, it's on and other video platforms when it comes to podcasts. But again, of course, I'm your host, Edwin J. Mayah here at the Conversation Outspoken Opinionated. Today we're having a great conversation. I think it's right in time for the season that we're in because I am having two of Prince George's County great minds. I believe these two women have been able to change the arena. They are great leaders. They're a great politician. So I am super excited to have them here. And so again, if you have been watching us, this is the Conversation Outspoken Opinionated. I am your host, Edwin J. Mayah, and I welcome Kayce Munyeneh to the conversation. Again, she is the mayor of Cheverly in Prince George's County, as well as Councilwoman Blegay, who is for District 6 in Prince George's County. And you guys are welcome to the podcast. Councilwoman Blegay, you are welcome as well. And so Kayce, thank you for joining us, for being here. I think you've graced this platform numerous times. I think now you get a pin. What do you think? You get a pin, and you will
I feel like
definitely
you
get
need a frequent flyer points or something, right?
Well, you get a mug. What about that? Let's start with that.
I don't have a mug. I need a mug.
So I'm gonna get you a mug. I am definitely gonna get you a mug. You will get a mug. But again, thank you, for being a part, for being here with us today. If you can just tell the people who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff. But yeah, so again, welcome, Kayce, and Mayor of Cheverly. I say thank you again for being here with us. I just want you to tell the people who you are, what you're doing, what the great things you've been doing since the last time you graced us with your presence.
Thank you for having me. You're an official celebrity now, EJ. So
Lord.
I'm so glad I can still be considered a contestant or for this show. It's gotten bigger and bigger with every venue. So I'm very glad to be here. I am still presently the mayor for the town of Cheverly. We have elections in May, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we've gotten a development site next to Cheverly that's about $500 million that we're looking forward to seeing developed. It's called Hospital Hill Gingerly. And we've got upcoming town elections and the opening of a new $10 million public works building. So Cheverly is still on the move, doing many things and being noticed nationwide. We were both in the Washington Post and the New Yorker most recently. So I'm really proud of our little town that could.
And that's super, super, super important. I think the fact that, we started with you. A lot of us remember when you started this journey, and you have not given up. I think you have been holding on to this thing. You've been doing, I see all the beautification that you're doing in Cheverly. As someone who used to live around there, I tend not to drive around there a lot, but every time I go around there, I was like, oh, wow, they're doing this. Oh, wow, they're doing this. The place looks nice. And so I'm really glad that you accepted, because I believe first you were nominated, then you did the elections. Am I correct?
Well, I started off as a council member, and I call myself a reluctant politician because I didn't want to do it at all. I just wanted a fence at Boyd Park, and so that ended up being the best way for me to get things done, was to actually have the position. Once I became a council member, I was vice mayor, and then I became the mayor.
Good. And so now, as the mayor, you're just turning things around. So we appreciate everything you're doing. And so it's just been great. And so we say welcome we said welcome again to the platform. Welcome being here to share knowledge with us as well. And so without further ado, I say thank you also to Councilmember Blegay for being here again with us. You guys, I'm just super excited when they were like, yeah, man, I know people. But it's funny because I just know people in PG County, and I'm living now in Baltimore County, so I need to get my stuff together. I'm working on it. I'm either going to come back to the county or I'm going to step my game up. Well, Councilwoman Blegay, I said thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being here just to impart us with knowledge. I say welcome. If you can just introduce yourself to the people, which I've done, but just tell them what you do and how your district is going.
Yes, no problem. Thank you so much for having me on here. I think it's my second time, so I haven't been as many times as Mayor Kayce, but I am on the Prince George's County Council. I've been on here for this is my third year. It seems like it's been longer. Many people said it seems like it's just flown by, but but yeah, I've been on here for 3 years, and we've been doing a lot of work. We've been really busy. We have a ongoing ER task force that's focused on bringing down the wait times in the county. We recognize that we have some of the worst wait times in the nation, and that's just the region in general. But the county alone, we have a lot to work to do with building our healthcare infrastructure. We've also created the Artificial Intelligence Task Force, which is supposed to be focused on we have a lot of talent in the county. Unfortunately, we started before all of the devastations of the Trump administration, but now we're dealing with that. So really it's a need to try to create an environment for our business community in the county, which is robust. We have a lot of tech companies here, so we're trying to engage them. But unfortunately, a lot of our tech companies gain their money from their work with the federal government. So then that is kind of shaky right now. I do have a upcoming legal event coming up, and this will be coming up in April 14th. We have 73,000 federal workers in the county over. They said that's just approximate number. That doesn't even include federal contractors. Many have been laid off. Some have been brought back. Many are in limbo trying to figure out what they're going to do. So we're going to have Attorney General Anthony Brown come, and that's April 14th, and we're going to talk to people about what their rights are. We're going to talk about the litigation that the state is going through. We're going to talk about AFGE, which is a federal union representing federal workers. They are in litigation to protect workers. And then we're going to have a lawyer talk about what the rights were for federal workers, some of the things that they can do to protect themselves. So we have a lot going on.
That's super, super amazing. I think and I really appreciate the fact that there's so many different things going on within the county, especially us being in this area, the DMV area. We know that I would say probably majority of the individuals that live in this area are federal workers. And so somebody or you heard about somebody who's been affected by what's going on. But as we are talking a little bit about politics, I really want to talk about you guys as leaders, women in leadership, breaking barriers and shaping the future. And so just this past weekend in Namibia, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but heard about it, but in Namibia, they have the first female president as well as the first female vice president. So this first time in the history of politics in a country around the world where the administration is both, the vice president and president are females. So I think it's what I would say a sounding board. Is something great that's happening. And so I think it's really great that we can see that people in that part of the world, I would say in Africa, are giving women the opportunity. Yes, we've seen Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Yes, we've seen all the other women, but for you to have two women running on a ticket and win the presidential election, I think that was super important. That was super dope. Lack of a better word, dope. To be like the kids now. But as we dive into the leadership conversation, I just want to, if you guys can share with us specific barriers that you've had over the years where you've been able to overcome as a woman in leadership, and anyone can start.
Yeah, I'll go. I think it's always funny that there's so many other places that are much more progressive than the United States of America, because we still have not had a woman who's been the president of our United States. And so, I'd be lying if I didn't say that gender was a barrier. I've often said to people that I never think about being a minority or being a woman. I just think about, can I get the job done? It's someone else that makes me think about being that, because they're trying to make me feel inferior or remind me that I should not be thinking as highly or as big of an idea as I'm thinking about. That will bring it back to my remembrance, because, my focus is always a deliverable and a goal, where are we trying to go? But the reality is, when you're doing door knocking, or if you're talking to people about being in positions of leadership, if you're in meetings where you're the only woman, people do mansplain. They do act like that they don't hear you. They do talk over you. There are things that happen solely because you're a woman, and that happens even more when you're a woman of color. But the most important thing to remember is, whatever position you have at the table, you're at the table. And so I always like to make sure people hear me before I leave that table, whether they like it or not. You might have an issue with whatever those boundaries or barriers are, but I don't.
Okay, Councilwoman. Blegay?
Yeah, I think I would just say that we are in a unique place in the county where we have been celebrating women leadership for quite a while. And I think it makes a difference on how people feel. Sometimes you need, what I've learned is that when you're not at the table, you really don't have your interests in the room. And that's just the reality. I've said this, all of us have African roots, and I've said that to the African community. Like, if nobody that is, someone can come and say, look, I represent your issues, I care about it, but there's nothing like having someone who actually thinks about it to be in the room. And honestly, as women, a lot of issues came up. One of the issues that came up on the council was one of the council members being able to participate virtually because she was having a baby and she wanted to be a part of the process. That was something we had. It was honestly an argument at the table. It was unbelievable. But one of the things we realized is that that's something that we had to talk about. What happens if you have an active mother that wants to be at the table and make decisions, but they have to take some time away from their kids? Should they have to step away permanently, or should we accommodate them like we accommodate many other groups? And just in general, having a women's touch on these issues. I mean, I noticed that in the county when I've called onto healthcare, mental health, a lot of the people have stood up and said this is the number one issue for us has been women. And oftentimes they're caretakers. That's why they're taking care of family members that are suffering from mental health, that are suffering from all types of healthcare issues. So when I called a roundtable, I see many women at the table. The reality is in Prince George's County, we are looking at a majority women voter base. Most of the households in the county are run by women. But this is not unlike, when we talk about Africa, at least two of us come from Liberia, a place
Mm-hmm.
where we have seen a woman president. And we also saw the men around them that didn't quite respect that leadership and what it meant. And even now we're looking at Liberia and they have the vice president and president, both men. So they didn't even mix it up later. But I will say this, the women leadership means bringing different issues to the table. And I don't want to say that our men advocates aren't there by our
Mm-hmm.
sides, because we do respect them. However, we do recognize that by having women at the table, there's certain issues that are going to be highlighted. I sit here with my shirt from Delta Sigma Theta, and of
Mm-hmm.
course my sorors on here too. But that's one of the things when I sit with the sorors and they say, those are women leaders, and they're like, here are the issues that we need to focus on. And now they're talking to one of their own that's going to take their issue to heart, because what means a lot to them means a lot to me.
I like the fact that you brought up that point, but I think for me, as you was talking about the fact that there was a female on the board and she was virtual because she just had having a child or whatever, and I look, I'm like, so that means that that policy wasn't even in place because
Right.
male dominated that field, so no need to even think about that. Now that it's
Right.
happening up, now we have to have, like, can you imagine we're having a conversation about that? And it comes up for me in my field that I do outside of this is where we were having conversation a couple of years ago about creating lactation rooms. And I
Yeah.
remember sitting in a meeting, and it's like a huge thing, and people are going back and forth. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, can somebody explain to me why is this an issue? Why are we even battling this issue? Because we all got here. Okay, good. I would say we all got here from a woman. So there should not even be a question. But anyway, as we see, the world is evolving and we're moving forward and all that stuff. But yeah, Mayor Kayce, you have something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to just share this quick story. My son was born in 2017. And right after he was born, the first place I had to go was go get my credentialing for being an EEO investigator and EEO counselor for DC government. So I went to the EEOC that they were offering the training through the federal government. I literally just gave birth 1 month before and asked, where's the lactation room? This is in the EEOC in 2017. And they said they did not have lactation rooms. And so that speaks to what it means when we use the word diversity. It's not just about whether or not we're talking about diversity of thought, but like,
Yeah.
when is the last time you've had a lactating woman in this building that helps make the decisions? Clearly, it's not been within the last decade or so, because the laws around lactation rooms have been in place for far longer than 2017. So it's just a reminder that spaces are not created for folks when they aren't at the table, right? And so
Yep.
thankfully, I'm glad that being there actually is what got them to move forward to having a lactation room in the one place in America where it should have been already.
Exactly. And so as we talk about that, I just, a lot of times you hear people will ask a woman, are you a girl, girl? Are you girl, girl? Are you a woman, woman? And I think I want us, if we can just branch on this, like, how can women in leadership support other women who are also in leadership? And we can
Mhm.
start with Councilmember.
Yeah, I definitely think that one thing that women, I realize when you get in the leadership, and I know May Casey would have seen this, men have a bond of like just hanging out and just making deals and just putting things together in a very social way. But women don't quite work that way. Well, oftentimes we want to separate things like the business meeting is a business meeting, the social meeting is a social meeting. What that does is that it almost makes us sort of serious in our space that we almost have to take time to mentor, take time to have that social gathering with women to say, here's what it takes to get to the next level. I just think for women, we second guess ourselves more. We don't have
Mm,
sometimes the I mean some women do, but a lot of women, even the ones that show pride and show like I am Iron Woman, often second guess ourselves. We often, they said it, you need to tell a woman 8 times to run before she decides to run. And I've seen men who are 21 years old saying I'm gonna run for governor and not thinking twice of it. And a woman, the same woman that has like double their experience and probably double their life will say, I need to think about it. I need to be more qualified. I need more credentials. So as women, we really need to focus on mentoring. And even if we are in leadership, we should actually look to mentor a woman around us who is in our space because we oftentimes are just focused on the goal. And that's how we work. And I said, I was like, for myself, I need to realize if there are women around me, I need to be mentoring them to tell them, here's how to get where I am, or even further
mhm,
than I am, or here's the difficulties that I encountered. And so I definitely think it's really important. Look, I will tell you this. One of the things that was a shocker to me is when I ran, I was the darker skinned woman in the race. And I never forget hearing people say, oh, the lighter skinned women, people gonna vote for them because they're lighter skinned. And it was quite I was shocked. It was all women running in my race, no men, all
mhm,
women. And so it became a look contest. And it wasn't men that were bringing this up, it was women, other women. And so I was very, because I was basically told I wasn't pretty enough. And someone actually had said that to someone that I wasn't pretty enough to win my race. Because it was all these other more attractive women there that people were more likely going to vote for. Now, that turned out to not be true.
mhm,
It was I won, and it wasn't like a close race. Like I won very solidly. However, I would say that that was a conversation that I felt that I started to let other women know about, because when I walked in, I was a lawyer running. I never even thought about how I looked other than I needed to be professional. I never thought of my hair need to look a certain way, my makeup need to look. It wasn't an obsession with that, but that was a shocker. And when I talked to other women, they were like, oh, yeah, that's how things are. And I'm like, what? So it's like this, been like this, but we don't have that conversation. And I was thrown off by the whole experience and frankly disappointed. But it's a reality. And I would let other women know that when you get in this space, I know for most women, especially in politics, you're focused on the issue. You're not focused on your shade of lipstick or how your makeup look or how you compare in looks compared to your opponent. You're not focused on that. You're focused on the issues. You're trying to come and say like we need lactation rooms, we need more opportunities for women. Like you're focused on issues. You're not focused on that. But to a certain extent, you got to be prepared because the mental trauma of that can be really rough on anyone.
mhm. Mayor Munyeneh?
I would just say, I don't think you ever told me that, Councilmember Blegay. That to me is
I was in the
heartbreaking.
midst. I think when we met up, I had even heard something that morning. The day that I met up with you, I had heard something, but I have been hearing it a lot. When you're
Yeah.
coming out of COVID, I was like kind of learning to dress back up again and all that stuff. But man, I mean, even people on my team, there was one person that was like obsessed, like, oh, you cannot have a bad hair day because look at the other two women in your race, look how good they look, how attractive they are. Even one elected official went to a union leader and said that it was the whole pretty thing. And I might not be as pretty as the others to win my race.
Wow.
Someone you know. And I was really shocked. And that one was what that rattled me the most because that person was in politics. So this wasn't just talk of people around. But the reality is that that was something I had to deal with. And it can impact your confidence.
Yep.
Because when you walk around, you're thinking, how many people are looking at me as a candidate? How many people are looking at me to say, is she is pretty or, because there's some things you can't control. Your face is your face. So, and it really was. I think that that was the biggest lesson that I've learned from that race, and I'm never going to forget it because what you don't think people are paying attention, they're paying attention to. But I think that needed to be a conversation because we
Yeah.
need to talk about why would women, I got that more from women than men. In fact, I was, some people came, I remember we were door knocking in a wealthier area in my district, and somebody said, I would have thought that this other person would have had all the votes here, but you got all the votes. And I said, well, why would you say that? And they were like, well, it's, it's the perception is that, a certain look or a certain thing will follow a more wealthier community. Like, what does that mean? Many of the people that were knocking on doors look like me. So why wouldn't they vote for somebody like me?
I think to that point, that's heartbreaking to me, especially as someone who grew up. I grew up, I would call them intellectuals, but I grew up with folks telling me I was smart, not pretty. And so I needed to focus on being smart and never really equated it to anything other than colorism because I have a family that has lots of light skinned people. And so when I moved here, I felt so embraced by my blackness and the blackness of the air. I was so, because I'm originally from the South where colorism is quite prominent and an issue. So I never expected to see that here. And so I'm heartbroken to hear that. It is a reality that we are judged based on appearance and men are not. If you think about you think about who is the most competent when it comes to doing work or the most active political person that's male. You don't even care. You could care less about what they look like. And I don't want to be rude, but let's look at Steve Bannon. That is not an attractive man. He's unkempt. He doesn't look like he's even showered for the day. But see how much power he holds, right?
And
And
nobody's
so
questioning him as to why he
at
should be there based on
all,
his
at
looks.
all. And if you were to see a female counterpart to him, you would have an expectation that she would be a certain size, color, weight, have her hair a certain way, have a certain poise. And so that's one of the things that becomes a barrier to women, which is there's an expectation of how we're supposed to look. There's an expectation of how we're supposed to look. And we are in a successful county with Black people, but they still have an expectation of how we're supposed to look and speak based on a white standard.
Yep.
And how we articulate in our diction and all of that. So yeah, it's really a sad and still a challenge today.
And it's funny that both of you guys share both of y'all share this information. I watched the Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her life story, and I remember a clip in the movie where she was supposed to go to court, but she was having this conversation with her husband about the length of her skirt. And they spend more time talking about the length of her skirt than the time they spent on her opening statement. And I remember fast forwarding and rewinding and fast forwarding and rewinding to see the amount of time that the producer, the people who wrote the movie, gave to talking about her skirt and talking about her opening statement. For me, that was really wild. And I started to talk to other people, and they're like, "Yeah, I think when it comes to leadership, when it comes to whatever facet in life that women are heading, it's a perception. You have to come in a certain kind of way. You have to wear a certain kind of color when you come into a space. Your lipstick can be too loud. Your hair can be too
And
much.
I deal with it almost
And
monthly.
I'm
I deal
like,
with
that is a
someone that
serious
says,
thing.
"Oh, you should pull back the makeup." It just like, and I would say like the clothes thing. One thing I said, okay, I'm gonna make sure I dress well all the time because that's one less thing for someone to bring to my attention.
Mhm.
How my hair looks, how my clothes look. The other day I was at Staples. This lady said, I love you. I see you on TV all the time, but you really need to pull back your eye makeup. And I said, I don't even wear eye makeup. Um, because I have an eye condition. So I really don't wear it. So I don't know what you're talking about. But the point is, like, it was a whole thing. And she really felt, she was like, look, I'm just helping you out. I think you need to do. And so we had a whole conversation with it. We looked at some videos that I've done. And she said that she hadn't really seen that these videos don't look exactly like the ones she saw on TV. Either way, the point is, you have to deal with it. And you can be frustrated, upset, but
Yeah.
you're only going to frustrate yourself. The best thing to do is just say thank you for that. And sometimes some of the feedback, the truth is if they're thinking it, somebody else is thinking it.
Yeah.
So it's like you need, so I said for the look stuff, I've gotta try. It's hard as a woman to make sure things fit you well, make sure that you don't have things bulging in the right in the wrong place. This is something that men just don't have to consider. Like they just do not. It doesn't matter how their clothes fit. They don't, even if people will still kind of respect. But as a woman, if you don't have a clean look, it's gonna be an issue. And it honestly will say, I don't know if we may, Kayce, maybe in Cheverly people are very are great with you, but I think the county-wide I found that the darker you are, the more criticism you do face. And I will say that people are more vicious about it. I've even seen it where they've talked about Aisha being critical about certain things, and I'm like, I don't even hear them talking about other people and these things that might be an issue with those folks, but it's fine. I do think we have a colorism issue in the
Oh
county,
yeah.
and I do think that regardless of the fact that there is a sort of looking at blackness in a way of celebrating blackness and black leadership, I definitely think that there are those suffering from color issue. Not all, but definitely a good enough of that I heard about it. I felt it. Yeah.
But as we talk about that, what leadership qualities you both of you feel that are unique to women, and how can that be leveraged in these male dominant fields?
Yes, science has shown that we don't actually multitask well, but I would argue that women are phenomenal multitaskers. We don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So we are managing those things that we know that we have to control because you're judging us based on them, like our parents, while also making sure we're addressing the tasks that we have at hand for the day. We have to consider, who are our part of our cohorts. Do we need to consider our colleague that might need to be breastfeeding while also passing policies and bills? We have to consider more, and so we're able to address more at once. Now, I hasten to say that because often what happens is there's the creation of a mythical Black woman that's supposed to be able to be magical and do all these things. We also, 70% of Black women in America suffer from anxiety and depression. And I think those things go hand in hand because we have higher expectations of what we're supposed to do, what we are supposed to be doing, and what is expected of us. But I do think that one of our superpowers is our ability to handle administration and to make sure that we can multitask and do more than one thing at one time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think women are a little more detailed oriented. And I would say that the caretaker part does bring a different role in mind. A lot of men are caretakers too. And I would say a lot of things that women can do, men can do also. It's just what they pay attention to. You are going to find that women are a little, when it comes to caretaking issues, women are more likely to look into issues with children, with raising children, with caretaking. Even like I said, healthcare is something that I've seen men and women, but a lot of women are caretakers, so they're coming there talking about what they had to go through to care for their family members, what they had to go through to care for their kids. And so there, you do definitely, while everybody experiences these things, there's certain groups that make sure that they're like, this is not enough. Now I would tell you this, we were just sitting, I was just speaking about women business owners. And one of the things that was brought to attention, which a man might not notice, but women have noticed, is that women have a harder time getting funding for their businesses. There is now, and in this day, as a lawyer, I know most people are never going to ask, where's your husband? And do you have a two-house home income type of thing? But there is like, okay, if this woman doesn't have a man behind them, is this like worth giving money to this business? Where people don't think the same about men when they're doing it. So that you find that when you look historically, women business owners get a lot less money, especially look at ones that don't have, some of them are partnered with their partners. So what about those that are not? They have a harder time getting funding for their businesses. Overall, I would say that again, is the diversity at the table. It's not that all women leaders need to be women, but it's making sure that women are at the table because there are issues that are just going to be a focus of a woman because of where she is in life. We had a bit. I was looking at a bill that came up before the council on in vitro fertilization and making sure that there's funding for that. Coverage for that by the county. And I just thought, like, if a woman is not on the council, that doesn't come up. And that's important to a lot of women that are trying to have children, right?
Children.
And so these are things that having a woman at the table we can benefit from. And then, of course, if a woman, it's the character of women, but I mean, characteristics, we can say that it differs based on the woman. But I will say that there are issues that really will go under they'll slip under and go away unless a woman is sitting at the table.
And so you have these misconceptions. There are us who have had leaders and bosses and VPs and CEOs who have been women. And you hear this misconception of, oh, they're too emotional. You don't want to get them into the room because if you get them into the room, they're gonna go over the top and they're gonna do this and do that. And what are some of the misconceptions you have heard about women in leadership? Mayor Kayce? Oh, okay.
You know what's funny to me is that there's always this assumption that women are emotional, right? Guess what? It's a double-edged sword. I am accused of being stoic and not emotional enough, right? Particularly for Black women, if we're emotional, we're angry.
Yeah.
And I'm rarely angry. And so some of those misconceptions kind of play out, and they're going to do it no matter what happens. Like people will see it regardless of what is actually happening. It's not even a reality. It's sort of like their perception, right? I will say that for some of the folks that I've met along this ride, you may hear a certain person has a different disposition, like well, she's nasty or she's catty or she might cry at the drop of a dime. And you finally meet these people and get to know them, and they are nothing like what the rumors are that have been spread about them. When I say nothing, nothing. So it's so important for you to remember to just get to know people. And I would say that for anyone, like the me and the council member that's on this show with you, we are still human beings. We're public servants, but we're still human beings. And guess what? We have bad days. I thought about when we first opened up and you talked about coming out of COVID, Councilmember Blegay, and I had so many people email me about complaints that they had that I wasn't on screen all the time. And I said, you know what? My counterparts don't have to fix their hair the way that I have to. I may not always be on screen all the time because it doesn't take me 5 minutes to do my hair. It takes me a little bit longer. And so if you're constantly bombarded with criticisms, which is quite frankly what you sign up for, as being a public servant, not every second of the day is going to be, all roses. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're living up to what those stereotypes are.
Yeah, and I would even add that when a man asserts himself, people just say he's being a man. You know what I mean? He is just, he's just being a man. He's is expected. It's no one complains. But when a woman asserts themselves, they become difficult. And oftentimes people sort of respond differently to male leadership. So if a male says, look, go this way, do this. A lot of times people would just do it. They're just kind of conditioned that way. But when women do that, it's kind of like, not everybody responds the same or might question or might do that. So then a woman says, no, I really mean it. Then it's like, whoa, she's doing too much. So I would say this. I have heard the whole women are emotional thing. I just don't buy it. I've worked with men who are just as emotional as, even more so than women. I do think that as a woman in leadership, I will say this, it takes a little more to get people to pay attention. And oftentimes, if you do become the aggressive woman that says, I want it this way and get worked up about it, people are turned off by it because they're like, that's not what a woman should do. So that is sort of the whole thing. It's like a woman should be sweet and, and there are some women that can do that and function as leaders and play that role. Some of us can. I'm not that person, right? So I am the aggressive woman that says what I think and how it is. And I have been labeled as difficult. But I think that people should be aware of it is like, how do you handle a man that says the same thing that I might say? Like, no, I'm not going that way. I have colleagues that they do that, and then people say, "Oh, that's just how they are," that no one calls them difficult. They just say, "Oh, they just do too much sometimes," and they just laugh. But if a woman does it, it becomes and I would say that there's also a generational part of that. I found that some of the older women that've been around, they've been conditioned, and I understand it's part of society that a woman should be a certain way. So when you become the aggressive woman, in some older generations, they don't like that, right? Like they will be the first ones to say that's not the way you handle it. But the reality is that a newer generation is coming that says I'm gonna be me, right? I'm gonna be the aggressive person, and that's okay. So I really think we should be more aware of how we treat women leaders, and when people pay attention to it more, you'll start to see it. But I think we're so conditioned in our world to see the men as aggressors, and when a woman takes that role, sometimes some people say that's not the role that a woman should play. But we're all leaders, so if you're a leader and you have to assert yourself, You should, because at the end of the day, that's what leaders do.
And so, there is this thing where, it's funny because even in corporate America, they always say that that's not ladylike. She shouldn't
Right.
act like that. She
Mhm.
shouldn't present herself like that. This is the way she should present herself. So, with that being said, how can organizations create this culture where women leaders have the opportunity to advance despite them being in this box of the way a lady is supposed to act?
And I'll let Miss Mayor Kayce has to leave us soon. I'll let her speak first.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think there's a couple of things that can happen. One is we have to combat our own beliefs about ourselves, right? So, speaking to the last point and tying it together with this one, I am Southern. I think of myself as a Southern belle. So when I learned that there were some folks that thought I was mean, the greatest compliment to a woman down south is that she's a nice lady. So I was heartbroken. People now think I'm mean because I'm assertive or I want to make sure certain things happen. So you have to first combat with whether or not you care about what other people think about you, because at the end of the day, they may never get to know the real you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have to be intentional with our institutions. And that's going to be harder now more than any other time because we are completely getting rid of anything that has to do with DEI. And we assume that has to touch DEI. But part of that intentionality is actually calling out when you see things like mansplaining. And I'll tell you something, men have no idea when they're doing it. They could literally take the same words one woman has said, repeat them, and think they've got to have a brand new novel idea, and they've never even heard the woman speak them just minutes before. They've completely ignored them. Some of that intentionality is actually, I saw Kayce and Fume recently coming to the defense of Senator Alsobrook saying, hey, let her speak.
Mhm.
Because an audience was being combative with her. I don't know that they would have treated a man that way, the way they were talking to her. But he was making space for her as a man to say, no, you may disagree with whatever decisions she's making or whatever vote she's doing, but we're going to listen to her and respect her. So that's part of that intentionality, is saying, no, whatever those previous things that we allowed, we don't allow anymore. And making sure that folks stand up for that.
Yep.
Well, I come from a little bit of a different background, where I come from an African background. And the African background, women are quite aggressive, I must say. We are, even the village woman, she might be a man, the man is still the leader of the house there, but women are aggressive. And I found that actually I come from a mother that had she was loud, she was assertive, she did not play games. And I brought that to Prince George's County. It's natural for me. It is just so natural. And it actually helped me as a lawyer. People say, oh, don't mess with our lawyer, Walla don't play, because I was assertive in a way. I was assertive in just my personality. And I would say that I recognize, and when I got on the council and got into the county, I realized that assertive way just doesn't, it's like the southern town, that it's like they do not necessarily want such an assertive woman. And so I honestly would say that it's one of those things where I had to sort of reevaluate where I am and how to address the people around me, and so that men don't feel intimidated, because that was what got back to me, that men around me felt very intimidated by my very assertive way. And I'm a lawyer, right? So I'm gonna argue you down. I'm gonna tell you you're wrong. I'm gonna come up with my ways and my points of why you're wrong, why you don't understand anything, or why you maybe haven't read things that you thought you read, you don't understand it. But I realized that in this world, I had to kind of shift a little bit. And I do think being a woman, I do think that I've seen men do the same thing that I've done, but it hasn't turned people off the way it did when I did it. And I don't have the sweet Southern Belle personality. And I
Yeah.
think, you all have seen and like I said, and I was talking to Crystal, my colleague. She comes from an African family too, but her mom is African American and from the South, actually. And so we talked about it, and I said, I'm gonna just say it. And I realized in the world that we're in, you almost have to study the world that you are around. I said, when I was little, my mom was president of one of the African associations, and they used to yell at each other. They would get up and they would yell, and they would have their fingers up, and they would
They'll
be in the
fight.
person's face, and they would tell you, shut your mouth, you don't do that, and they would have that. And I just said that Prince George's County is a southern town, and they just don't that is not the way people want to handle with women. And I said, you know what? I think that we can adjust. I think it's been a huge adjustment for me. I also came from being a lawyer, and that part of advocacy was being aggressive. And that was a tactic that I used to be as a lawyer. And it, when I got in here, I said, okay, it's hard as a woman to do that. And if you do
Yeah.
it, I mean, people will say that that's you, but then to a certain extent, sometimes they say you get more with honey, right? So
Yep.
I had to change my approach here as a woman because of the fact that being an aggressive woman all the time didn't work for a town that just didn't like that.
But I know, Mayor Kayce, you have to leave. So before you leave, if you can just give us this, what has been the most powerful lesson you've learned about leadership as a woman?
Powerful lesson I've learned about leadership. It's not so much about leadership as a woman. The most powerful thing that I've learned, period, in roles of leadership and being a woman is you have to be okay with being yourself.
Mm.
I know it sounds cliche, but people know when you're being organic and authentic, and they make determinations and decisions based on that. They might do business with you, they may shake hands with you, but if they don't trust you, if they don't feel like you have their best interest at heart, you might get a distance, but you will not get very far. And so being comfortable with being my organic self, I say I'm an accidental politician. I'm also highly inappropriate at times because now I don't think so much about being as demure as a Southern lady. I'm like, what can we get done? Because my primary focus is, am I wasting time? Am I taking time away from my son? And if I'm doing that, I need to be able to point to what I did when I wasn't with him. And so because of that, I bring my authentic self to every project, every table, to make sure that I bring in what I bring to the table. What I have to bring is unique. The way I think is unique. It's diverse all by itself, and it's good enough all by itself. So that's what I would encourage people to do. Just I know it sounds cliche, but just learn how to be yourself and be comfortable with it.
Well, Mayor Kayce, thank you so much for being here with us. We know you have so many things going on. You got to rush
Thank
and do something
you.
else. But thank you for being here with us, and you have a great day.
You take care.
But so, Councilwoman, so before we end, we're still here. We got a couple of questions I want to ask you. But I'm going to put the question down and let's talk about mentoring. Because I think a lot of times, when women who are in leadership, they're expecting you to be a mentor. They're expecting, because like we talked about earlier, the nurturing side of a woman. When a woman comes in, she want to make sure everything's okay and all that stuff. So are there opportunities for young girls who are in Prince George's County to get in some sort of political mentoring program? Is there anything that they can get into because they see another brown girl doing something that they aspire to do?
Yeah, well, I encourage them to reach out to our office. We know there are different groups that are putting together mentoring programs for women. But what
Mm-hmm.
we will say is that I like the one-on-one approach with some of the women in my community. So I would ask them to reach out to my office. You can follow me at WallaKB at Instagram. You can message me there, or you can go to Council District 6 and email my office, and we'll definitely work with anybody who's interested in getting involved in politics.
Great. So what has been your most powerful lesson that you have learned over this tenure of being lawyer and now a council member?
Well, I just really think that you have to be intentional of bringing things that you know others can't see to the table, because your goal is to really bring an issue. You're there to bring an issue there that some people can't see. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I've been intentional with all of the things that I've been doing to make sure that my role is for those that can't see the issues in healthcare. Let me bring that to the table. For those that can't see some of the issues and how we assist our community during times. I'm not here to just take a title. I want to take action. And I think that's really important. We realize, like I said, a woman not being at the table means there will be issues that will not be resolved. And so by us being in the room, we can actually bring forth things that can change lives. And that's the goal that we have. That's it.
Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you so much again for honoring our invitation, being here with us, and for just sharing knowledge with us. And of course, you already shared with the people how they can follow you. But of course, you can find Councilwoman on Instagram. You can find her on Facebook. You can go to Google and just put in her name and you will see all her videos. You will see all the great work that she's doing also in Prince George's County. So I want to say thank you again for joining us. And
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for being here. You have a great evening.
Thank you.
So, well, people, like I've explained to you guys, we have been having these different conversations on different things that's been happening. And so I want to say thank you again for watching. Of course, this was the conversation, Outspoken and Opinionated. Of course, I am your host, Edwin Mayah. I want to say thank you for watching, for participating. Of course, again, it's another Thursday here in our conversation land. And so what we want to do is remind you, go to YouTube, The Conversation Outspoken Opinionated. Go to Facebook, The Conversation Outspoken Opinionated. But if you go to Instagram, it's the Outspoken Opinionated Podcast. We want you to follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Conversation Outspoken Opinionated, and our episodes are all there. You can go back and watch previous episodes if you missed any. But without further ado, I want to say have a great evening. You guys all enjoy yourselves. Stay warm. I know the weather is getting great, but be there and do good. Until we see you again, have a good evening.